What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. I want to take a look at a fight that took place between Kid Norfolk and battling Siki. That fight would take place November 20th, 1923, New York's Madison Square Garden. The fight would go 15 rounds. Now, Kid Norfolk would become the second colored light heavyweight champion in boxing history. But he would take on the very first black light heavyweight champion, and that would be battling Siki. Battling Siki would knock out George Compartier in 6 rounds. And he would become the very first black light heavyweight champion of all times. Now, Kid Norfolk was born September 20th, 1895 in Norfolk, Virginia. He would box out of Baltimore, Maryland. He stood 5 foot 8 inches, weighed 165 to 185 pounds, and he was managed by Leo P. Flynn. Now, Leo P. Flynn would also have Panama Joe Gans. And those two men would spar many rounds. Panama Joe Gans would wind up becoming the first colored middleweight champion in many years. Now, you had a fighter by the name of Larry Estridge, and he would take the title away from Panama Joe Gans. Between January 12, 1916 and December 17, 1916, he would defeat Roughhouse Ware, Big Bill Tate, Jeff Clark, and Arthur Perkley. Kid Norfolk would beat many fighters during his day. Between January 10th, 1917 and December 17th, 1917, he would have a no-decision contest against Sam McVeigh. He would defeat Arthur Perkley and Tom Crawley 4 times, Ed Gumbo Smith twice, and Billy Misk, as well as Sam Langford. Between March 25th and November 19th, he would take on a fighter by the name of Jack Thompson, George Robinson, Dan Porky Flynn, Big Bill Tate, battling Jim Johnson, and Joe Danette. Between January 1st, 1919, and December 19th, 1919, be in the ring with Jamaica Kid and Billy Misk and John Lester Johnson and Jeff Clark, who was known as the Joplin Ghost. Now, 1919 was a very interesting year because you had fighters such as Jack Dempsey, who was known as the Manasseh Mauler. He would become a heavyweight champion when he would knock out Jess Willard, July 4th, Toledo, Ohio of that year. You also had the AEF, America's Expeditionary Forces. It was a military team that would be developed. And you had great fighters on that team. Fighters such as Leo Patterson, who was a lightweight. You had Gene Tunney, who was a light heavyweight. And that team was something else. But January 2nd, 1921, December 30th, 1921, he would take on Jamaica Kid 3 times, battling Geehee, John Lester Johnson, and Harry Greb. Now, when Kid Norfolk would take on Harry Greb, that would be interesting. Because Harry Greb would suffer a thumbing that would last for him 47 fights to the end of his career. He would be blind in one eye. Some called him the One-Eyed Bandit. He was known as the Pittsburgh Windmill. Between January 30th, 1922 and December 22nd, 1922, William Ward would take on Theodore Tiger Flowers, Harry Wills, John Lester Johnson, and Lee Anderson. May 8th, 1923, November 20th, 1923, he would take on Theodore Tiger Flowers, Jamaica Kid, James Tuck Jackson, battling Siki. Battling Siki would be the fight that we would be talking about today. This fight took place in New York's Madison Square Garden. In many years, battling Siki would be offered a tremendous amount of money to face Harry Greb and Harry Wills. $45,000 was offered to fight Harry Wills, and $30,000 was offered to fight against Harry Greb. But battling Siki wanted to take on Kid Norfolk, and that fight would be something else. As you look over to your left portrait, the man standing to your left will be battling Siki. The man standing to your right will be Kid Norfolk. When you look over to the picture towards your right, Battling Siki is to your right, and Kid Norfolk is to your left. These men are very strong. And they would fight once a week, sometimes twice a week. They fought everyone in their time. And I just wanted to acknowledge these two men. Not often talked about. They were great fighters. Battling Siki, William Ward, Kid Norfolk. Oh, what great fighters they were. Now let's talk about Battling Siki for one moment. He was born September 16th, 1897, St. Louis, French West Africa. He died December 15th, 1925 in New York's Lower East Side. He was shot and killed because he didn't quite take orders very well, better said. He stood 5 foot 10 and a half inches, weighed 161 to 178 pounds. He had a record of 63 wins, 21 losses, and 35 knockouts. 1922, September 24th to be exact, to be in a ring with George Carpentier, and he would knock him out in 6 rounds. Now, some say it was somewhat of a foul, but he got the job done. And for that reason, he would be known as the first black light heavyweight champion in boxing history. Between March 17, 1923 and December 25, 1923, he would fight some really, really good fights. But on March 17th of that 1923 year, be in a ring with Mike Mateague, and he would lose his light heavyweight championship in Dublin, Ireland. Fought him on St. Patrick's Day. Mike Mateague was Irish. Wasn't quite a good idea. I don't think it was. We would have 3 expeditions that year. And he would take on Jack Johnson. November 20th, 1923, New York's Madison Square Garden. What a fighter Battling Siki was. So I just wanted to take a look at these two men because they were outstanding fighters. And often we overlook great names. This is Black History Month, and I wanted to mention a few fighters on this evening. Shout out to Battling Siki and Kid Norfolk, better known as William Ward. Kid Norfolk would fight many battle royales, become the champion in Panama, holding the light heavyweight championship belt over there. He could punch. He could box. He could do it all. Now, I took out this scrapbook, and I told you I had 2 scrapbooks. 1,000 pages, 2,000 front and back, so that's 4,000 pages of all black fighters. And here looking at Kid Norfolk, easily tames Battling Siki. I'm just going to show you a little bit of the article. So this entire book is all black fighters. Let's look over here for 1 second here. Another fight for Johnson. As you can see here, Johnson versus Sam Langford or Joe Jeanette. And it goes to tell you some information on that. But this was very interesting that I came across. Negro fighters die poor. Something about the famous black men who fought in the ring. It is sad but true that the black boxers who have become famous within the last 25 years have nearly all died poor. Peter Jackson was a real Jack Johnson in his day, spent all his ring earnings, and was very poverty-stricken when he died. George Dixon, who was the greatest of all black fighters in the lighter classes, spent 3 fortunes, had nothing left. Joe Gans, lightweight champion for many years, also died poor. Jack Blackburn, who was at present making, trying to stroll here. So what they're saying is all the black fighters couldn't handle their money. But I wonder why. And that's a different conversation. One day I'll go through this book so you can really take a good look at some of the articles that you won't find a lot of these articles on Facebook. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel.